Hey, this is going to be a little bit of a more challenging chapter because talking about how we use neuroscience to learn dance requires understanding a bit of neuroscience, and it's also very unfamiliar for a lot of people. However, over the last 2 decades, there's been done a lot of research, over 200 scientific studies they would look at like brain scanners to see what's happening in the brain when people learn movement. They did rigorous scientific experiments where they taught the same thing in 2 different ways, compared what worked better. And the result is pretty consistent. There's not a lot of dispute. However, it's very unfamiliar to how people think about learning movement. And the research community expects that as this gets more and more into the mainstream, eventually this will become the norm of learning to dance. And then it won't be foreign to people anymore, it'll be just like this is how you learn dance. So where it's a special time of, where it looks foreign and kind of like hard to make sense of. So let me back up to 1830. In 1830, the Code of Terpsichore was published. It was a dance manual, and the breakthrough in it was that the dance master looked at ancient Greek statues, like their poses, to figure out like what poses looks the most pleasing. And it started an approach to dancing where the dance instructor would want to have a certain position, and they would tell the dancer like that's a position to assume. And a lot of people, they tend to like classes where things are explained to them logically and they logically understand it. The issue is that the human body doesn't learn movement very well that way. The reason is, if you think logically about it, you use a part of your brain that's good at solving math problems. You're not using the part of the brain that's good at solving movement problems. So if you want to use a part that's using movement problems, you have to do what's called external focus. You have to focus on something outside of the body parts that you want to move. I'll give you an example. If I want to do throw this, I can focus exactly on how I pivot my arm, how I move my hand forward, or I can focus on the target. Research finds the more I focus on how I twist my shoulder, how I extend my arm, the worse I'm going to be at it, the worse I'm going to be at learning how to throw. And the more I focus on the target, the better I'll be at learning it. That's called external focus. Now in dance, because you move your own body, it's a little tricky. Like it seems like you have to be told like bend your elbow, raise your hand, all of these things that make you consciously think about what you do. However, there are options for external focus. One option is to focus on your partner. For example, if I do a chest isolation with my partner, my partner can focus on her own shoulders. Let's say I'm the follower and someone's leading me in a chest isolation. I can focus on my own shoulders. I can look in the mirror at my shoulders. All of this is going to make me very conscious of what my shoulders do. However, if I focus on the pressure of my partner on my body, I'm going to be externally focused because I focus on the pressure I feel. And if my partner gives me more or less pressure to keep me even, I can just focus on the pressure, something aside from the actual movement. And I've learned when I do these things in class, it makes a tremendous difference. When I ask people on their own to just isolate your shoulders side to side, they have really hard times in moving them. But if I ask them to do it with a partner, it often takes them less than 60 seconds to keep their shoulders smooth. Yeah. And another aspect of neuroscience, it's kind of related, is implicit versus explicit learning. The most famous science example is how you teach football players to come to a running stop with a weight in the heels. You will say, don't come forward. Coaches will usually explain how you have to lean back to come to a running stop with weight in the heels and all the details, and players will try and try and try, and their weight just keeps coming off the heels. And then the implicit way is you put a wood block on the ground and you say, touch the wood block just with the knees. And so people run and they kind of carefully try to just touch the block and not knock it over. And they implicitly learn to keep their heels down, they implicitly lean back, all these alignments that players struggle with just automatically click into place. Another example is if you teach someone downward dog. Sometimes they're in downward dog and their shoulders off, and there are 5, 6 different alignment issues. But as a teacher, if you understand what is at the root of the misalignment, you might just ask them to bring their hips back, and it'll fix all the problems implicitly. Implicit learning, I've noticed, because I see people learning explicitly and implicitly, it's amazing how fast people learn implicitly, but they also often walk out of class thinking they haven't learned much because it was so easy. It's kind of a funny conundrum. I know this is very detailed, but few things are like crack. If you think about you could take 5 years to learn dance or 1 year to learn dance, these principles save a ton of time. The third neuroscience principle is high versus low bandwidth learning. So what does that mean? In a lot of classical dance instruction, you're asked to repeat the same movement over and over. They tell you this is the correct movement, repeat it for hours and hours until you get good. So this is called low bandwidth learning, because let's say we do this vertical hip circle. If you do this motion over and over, your brain doesn't really gain a lot of new information. It's just kind of robotically repeating the same thing over and over. But if you try lots of different variations, related movements, your brain is going to get a lot new data. So let's say we just kind of lift up here. Maybe you go side to side. And this additional data is likely to give your brain some movement insights. I know sometimes I'll play around with something, and suddenly oh, wow, there's another muscle. I can also move in this way. And this little insight makes the actual target movement better. And so by more variety, not random variety, anything, but variety within a certain region, you learn a lot faster. So to summarize, if you want to learn dance fast and well, use external focus instead of internal focus. That means focus on your partner, focus on the goal, or use imagery. The more you think about the actual movements of your limbs, the slower your learning is going to be. The second is implicit versus explicit learning. If you have a smart instructor who can come up with implicit learning exercises, you can pretty effortlessly learn complicated things. And the third thing is high versus low bandwidth movement. If you just keep repeating the same movement, you're going to learn slowly. Try variations of like the similar movement, and it's going to speed up how fast your brain learns.